Hello, everybody, and welcome to another 10-year bonus episode. This time with I am biased, but my favorite era of CCMTG. I've got John Stern and Seth Manfield on the call. What's up, guys?
Hey, yeah, I mean, it's also my favorite era of the show. I'm gonna be honest with you.
You're really biased, though, to be fair.
Yeah, no, great to be here. How long ago was it that we did the show? It's been probably 5 years, something like that.
Dude, it's so crazy. I was thinking about this, and I was going to say this during this part of the show. There are hard eras of Magic. When you think about, like, the 10 years that the show has been on, where, like, you have... I think that the hardest eras to do the show are this one, the next one, like, after you guys leave, where, like, I quit for, like, a year. I'm like, I actually can't do this anymore. And I think that, like, the really early era, like, the switch between PTQs and RPTQs, I think was probably the other hard era. But you guys had a really hard era of Magic to, like, join. And also, it was so funny because, like, you came in from such different perspectives where, like, you are two of the top 100 Magic players in the world. I asked you guys to join.
Well, Seth is like top 5, and I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, Seth
maybe
is,
I'm squeezing in if you say 200.
Yeah, I mean, Seth since doing the show has, like, solidified himself as, like, you know, I mean, obviously Seth, you know, I'm biased, but, like, you know, maybe top 5 all time, above, like, Brian and, like, you know, those people. But it's so funny because, like, when I asked John to join the show, he's like, "Can I get Seth on the show?" And I was like, "Seth Manfield?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can get Seth. Does Seth want to do the show with us? Like, let's do it." And we didn't know what was about to happen. Like, none of us knew.
Right. It was right before they sort of rearranged everything, right?
Maybe Seth, did you know? Did you know when we asked you?
I'm flashing back now, yeah, to when I first joined up, and I think this was right before, like, the MPL was getting
I
announced.
think so too. I think it was like 2 months before.
It was
like,
Team Super Series era.
Yeah.
Team Super Series. Okay. Yeah. So during the time of our show, certainly some things changed. I think players felt either like it just felt like Magic players ended up going, pros kind of separated, and the community in some ways became more segmented. So we'll get into that.
No, it's so
but...
funny. It's funny because, like, we had no idea. Like, we were like, this is like a perfect cast. It's like a PTQ grinder, a gold pro, and a platinum pro. Like, let's go. And, like, that's just not what ended up being the show. Like, that it was like the perfect cast, and it's not what it ended up being. I do want to know though.
I mean, I'm flashing back. You're like, John and I were, like, in Uber rides, like, every other weekend, like going, staying in hotels, like, you know, it was a good time. Like, I look back at those days and I'm like, yeah, this was great. Like, I didn't realize it then. Like, I just thought I was just living in the moment, right? But now I'm like, there's never going to be, regardless of how many tournaments you win, it's just, there's never going to be the same environment of, like, going to Grand Prix and, you know, doing so it was a grind. Let's call it what it was. It was a grind, like, you know, trying to figure out how we were gonna, you know, cobble things together to have Magic be our full-time job. And the podcast was, you know, it was a small piece, but it was, you know, it's a giant puzzle of trying to get everything to fit. But it was just, you know, like, I haven't seen John, I haven't seen you, Spencer, you know, but I mean, I haven't seen some of these some folks who I interacted with on, like, you know, a day, not daily, but, like, weekly, monthly basis. And so that part to me is sad. I just look back on it. It's like, yeah, like, this was a community.
It's so hard. I think the same thing for what it's worth, Seth. We're like, man, this might be a different episode than we have the show notes on. But, like, I think about, like, I actively, John probably gets annoyed. He's like, why is Spencer messaging me out of the random like every
Annoyed.
3 months? Like, and I do the same to Seth. Like, Seth posted his. Are they still for sale? Can we promote this, by the way? Like, Seth posted his Red and Six that was for sale, and I wanted it on my wall. Like, I wanted to frame it and like put it on my wall. I was like, "Oh, Seth, if you sign this, like, I'll buy it." And like, I wanted Seth to get the right price. And my wife was like, "No, you just got a new job after a year of getting laid off. Like, you're not buying this Magic card." But like, that's how I feel about this era of CCMTG. Is that we never got like what we paid for, right? Like, we never got the thing. And what's funny is like, you guys did your job, right? Like, I think John, you had a really good finish with Phoenix. Seth, I think you might have both top aided. You top aided with Green White, I believe, and like had another finish on the show. Like, we had multiple finishes on the show. I think that like I won like multiple RCQs on the show. Like, we all did our jobs. But I'm kind of curious, John and Seth, you guys like came in year 6. Like, what did you think when I was like, hey, we're going to celebrate 10 years now. I want to do something with all the hosts. You guys did it for a year. Like, what were your thoughts when I was like, I'll let you go first, Seth. Like, what were your thoughts when I was like, hey, we're going to do a 10-year celebration. Do you want, like, can you come talk to me and John?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't follow a lot of podcasts. Like, I know there's a lot out there. A lot of them feel like they're, they die pretty quickly. So to hear, I don't know, like, comparatively, but I'm sure the list is very, very small.
We are the longest running constructed match podcast.
Okay, well, let's do a round of applause for that for CCMTG. And I know that there's been a number of other a lot of folks who have been on the show throughout the time period, and that's great. I mean, I think that if it was just John and I, for 10 years, that just wouldn't have been possible. Like, you have to rotate other folks in, and everyone has their own unique personality. Like, mine may be, hey, like the nitty gritty of what's my last card in my 75 and why it's the correct one. So if you're in on that, then great. But like, that's not everyone's cup of tea, right? So just having that diversity on the show and just reflecting and looking back and like, hey, this is the first 10 years. I'm hoping you're calling us back in another 10 years and let's go,
That's too sweet. John, you had like I wanted to ask you second because I think you had a really unique perspective of like, you joined the show as a gold pro and then had it like ripped away from you, like into the show.
Well, so the timing of when we started the show was a little awkward for me, and I don't know, like we had discussions about it during the time, even before they announced or they got rid of gold or whatever they did. I felt very disengaged with Magic in general. But for me, the show was more about like, how, I mean, you're always improving, like how to just take this thing you really enjoy doing and learn and try to get better at it, which I think, focusing on that aspect rather than, what's up in the pro community or, what is Wizards doing to the different organized play structures was really good. It was a really good focus for the show for me. But yeah, when you asked me to do the 10 years, like 10 years, congratulations, it's amazing. I think I remember you saying at some point that you're going to move away from constructive criticism and focus on, I think you're doing a Smash Bros or something.
I did.
And,
I did. I have a Smash Bros podcast.
Yeah.
But
but yeah, to see you're still going, 10 years, it's, it's unbelievable.
I think that you guys really, this is off the show notes too, but I'm just going to say it. Like, there was a tweet that came off my Facebook timeline not that long ago that was like, this person won Worlds and was like in mad tears, and I was like, I wish we he does I wish we had more reactions like this, like more real reactions. Like, I don't care if it's a pop off, I don't care if it's like tears. But it was actually before I ever met you, Seth, and I remember really vividly like that you wore your heart on your sleeve, and you you did this. And what's so funny is, like, I remember meetings between the three of us where we talked about always improving. And you were really honest. And you did this one thing where you were like, sometimes I'm not better, Spencer. Like, what am I supposed to do in weeks where I'm worse at Magic? And I was like, Seth, you're like one of the best 10 Magic players in the world. Tell them why you're not better at Magic this week. I'm kind of curious, like, you've since then not just been like, you know, the best Magic player in the world that year, but you are like, you are one of the best Magic players of all time. How does like, I don't know, how does this work? Like, 10 years of anything is a long time. Like, I've been doing this show for 10 years, but you what have you been playing Magic for 20 years now?
Yeah, it's over 20 now. I mean, the game keeps getting older, right? As we do.
So how does that work? Like, you know, you have a show like this that you spend a year on. How do you focus on? I mean, it seems impossible. Like, I've been the best Magic player that I've been years ago before I had kids. You have 2 kids since you became another Pro Tour champion. Like, how does this work? How do you be the best Seth compared to the Seth before kids, before anything? I don't know. How does it work, man?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess getting back to the time period where we were, you know, towards the end of our time together was actually great for me. Like, I was making, you know, 6 figures from one tournament, you know? So, like, for me, it was a great time to be really good at Magic and to use that skill to my, you know, to in that chunk of time where the NPL, that was, yeah, like you said, Spencer, I have 2 kids. I have it's a battle, right? Because I keep getting older. I'm thinking about, well, Magic. I love playing Magic. I want to spend, as honestly, like, it's addicting. It's an addicting game. I want to right now. I want to be like cube drafting or like drafting Outlaws of Thunder Junction or you know, brewing for the Pro Tour, because I'm always in the Discord just like spamming random decks. Like, that's what I want to be doing because I love to do it, and that's kind of how, I mean, putting a lot of time into the game has helped. But the problem is that it's mentally taxing to try to be very, very good at Magic. And even when you are considered the best in the world or one of the best in the world, you're still not winning that much of the time, you know, like, comparatively speaking, because in order to win a tournament, you have to go, you know, X and 2 or X and whatever the number is. Like, mathematically, it's just very difficult. Like, if you show up to a Pro Tour and there's 400 people, to be the first one, like, the odds are stacked against you. So,
Can I call something out really quick?
yeah.
I just want to say that, like, this was like something we talked about with you, John, where, like, I think that you had 2 records that were good enough for top 8 of a Pro Tour that you didn't top. Is that right?
I feel like my specific records are kind of a blur. I never played a Pro Tour where I was like, I feel completely prepared and I feel like I played my best. That never happened for me. I always, I mean, part of being a pro Magic player for most of the time I was on the tour is you have 3 weeks. You know,
Yeah.
you've got to learn the format, break the format, the draft, whatever. And I take longer, I suppose. I mean, I had some top 16s. I feel like I could have had a top 8, but also I'm not one of the 8 best players in the room. I don't think I expect to have a top 8 in any given tournament.
What's so funny to me is I think about, like, Seth, you just, like, the Pro Tour you just won. Like,
congrats, by the way.
Yeah, you just, like,
yeah, you say it's hard to stay at the top. I just tune in for one PT and I see Seth and Scott in the top 8. So, you know,
dude,
it's pretty nice.
What's so
nice.
funny? What's so funny about this is, like, we had your teammate on our podcast. I don't know if you got to listen to that. And they were like, yeah, everybody played the same deck except for 2 people. One of them was Seth, who won the Pro Tour, and one of them was Paul, who played like the original deck list.
Yeah, I am happy that I have now gotten to the point where I'm gonna make my own decisions.
Well, I felt like that was true about you when you were playing Green White on the show. Like we did, I feel like we did like a whole episode on Green White where you were like, "I'm not playing Green Black. Here's why I'm playing Green White. I think Karn is good. I think Carnosaurus." Like you did this like whole episode on the show. Do you remember this?
Yeah, now it's coming back, the Green White Karn deck.
Yeah, and you were like, "No, just play this. It's good in the mirror." It's like, and I don't know. I feel like that's always been like your personality, where you're like, you're really good at internalizing and listening to other people, but you'll still be like, "Here's why I believe what I believe. If you can change my mind, cool. But like, here's where I'm at."
I am very stubborn. Like I will do stuff where
I'm strong.
Like I try to be nice, and I like try to hear people out, even though I know there's no chance I'm going to make that deck list change or like whatever. I'm like, I don't want to be like, no, like I'm right because whatever, because it's hard to. I don't like getting into arguments about Magic, and sometimes you do that. Like if you're testing with a group of guys, and you know they want to play another Death Legion Zealot, and I don't want to. Like, what's that look like? You know, like I'm not going to spend hours
just gonna play
debating
Sheldred,
it.
and then you guys have to worry about it later.
Yeah, like I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and you know that's what it's going to be.
I kind of feel the same way. Like I think you know, one of the questions I think maybe it was in the show notes was like, what did you take away from Magic? And one of the things, like for me, was to just be completely willing to go against the hive mind. Like the whole world may think one card's better, and if I think a different card is better, that's the card I'm playing. And Seth probably has the same attitude.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just like how you think about a game, or how you think about a sideboard plan, or how you think about a matchup, or just your own experiences with a card. And it's especially true, like when decks aren't like super stock or whatever, like for the Vampires deck or the Green White deck or any deck like that hasn't been like, if a deck's been tested, like if I was gonna pick up Amulet Titan for Modern, like I'm not gonna go probably, even though I haven't really played that deck, I'm probably not gonna switch a bunch of cards in it because you know it's just kind of what it is. But
you'd play 60 though, right, Seth? You would play 60 though, right?
Probably play 60.
Yeah,
right.
okay.
That's a good point. Well, I'm not gonna commit. To that,
it's fine. We can. Dom accepts that he's wrong. We we had him on the show. It's fine. We can move forward.
No, yeah, I think that I mean, that's just for me has been super valuable, is to trust my own instinct, I guess. It's gotten me this far, and
I think that you're both diving into the next question, which we kind of already dived into, but I want to give you both like the proper time on it. And John, I'll let you go first. Like, as somebody that's done this show for as long as I've done it, you know, I've had doctors tell me that they were in surgery and they were like thinking about always improving. And they're like, all right, this thing has happened. What's the next step? And they thought about it because of the show. Like, it's the greatest compliment I've ever been given in my whole life. What the other way has happened? Like, what has Magic taught you?
Well, I think Magic and also the podcast was an outlet for me to sort of let that aspect of my personality sort of really thrive. I mean, like the stuff I'm doing, like I'm not playing Magic these days. I'm more into things like board games or stuff like that. But anything I do, even when I played sports more often, I always want to be getting better at it. Like I like competition mainly as a way to measure my own progress. So yeah, that's the way I approach everything. Is just, you know, okay, like this is the skill I have. This is, you know, where I want to get to, and what can I do on a daily basis to improve at it.
Do you find yourself doing that? Like, I mean, obviously you're in school now, but like, do you find yourself doing that to a fault? I know that for me, sometimes I am too competitive with myself. And I'm kind of curious, like, do you ever find those moments?
I always, compared to the other Magic players, I was always I don't tilt very easily. I don't get really upset at myself for a mistake or things like that. I'm more objective about things. So I don't find it gets I do have to turn it off sometimes. Like there are some situations like, okay, I said I was playing board games. Like sometimes you play board games with people who are not very competitive, right? And you still want the social experience. You still want a fun evening. So you tune down the competition a little bit. You're not always cutthroat like you might be in, a Pro Tour top 8 or something. But for the most part, I think it's just I use it to my advantage to like go into areas of life where I can sort of let that part of my personality come out.
I love that. Seth, you are entering like a new era of your life. Again, by the way, you do this every 3 years or so. I'm kind of curious. Like the same question applies to you. Like, how did Magic impact like your schooling decisions, your parenting decisions? Like, you've been out of the show for what, 4 or 5 years now. That's so crazy to think about. Like to me, you guys were yesterday, and then like we did like some math on it. Was like, oh my gosh, like my new co-host has like done more shows than like half my co-hosts. But I'm curious, like you've done the thing that I think every human being who's ever picked up a Magic deck, gotten married, had kids, has ever wished to do, which is just to be one of the best players in the world. And I'm curious, like, is there something in Magic that let you do that in life?
I definitely think as far as Magic is just for me when I think of I'm the best at something, it's always going to be Magic. Like I feel like Magic in some ways it's difficult because it depends on what role it is in your life. Like is it your job? Is it your passion? Is it something you do every once in a while for social reasons, right? Because you're meeting up with friends, or is it something you just do because you're good at it, but that can also be a reason. I've been juggling all of these things. The thing about Magic that you hit on, Spencer, when you said a parent of two, is that Magic doesn't actually work that well being a parent. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just calling it what it is. When I'm playing Magic, that's taking time away from spending time with my kids. So I can't call myself the best dad in the world as much as I would love to be able to do that. Because if I'm traveling for a week, or now I've cut that time down because I'm now gone, just like showing up. I showed up Thursday night, right before the Pro Tour for this one because I couldn't do the testing house experience, which I love. I love going to the testing house and getting to hang out with a group of Magic players because I never get a chance to do that, and it's my outlet, of just like because it's kind of for me. Like I feel selfish about it sometimes, but even though I think it's good, I think it's helpful for me to get prepared for the tournament, but it's more so just to like have that time. So for me, it's always going to be Magic. If I think of like my life has been a balancing act. So it's not easy. I wouldn't recommend it to try to do what I've tried to do. And now I'm always trying to juggle with myself because of how good I am at Magic. How much of a priority I can put on the game. Yeah.
I love that answer, and like I'll speak to it as also parent of two. I qualified for my first Pro Tour, and then had a kid, and then have not qualified for a Pro Tour since. And I love Maxwell, and I would never blame him for anything. I had a conversation with John once. I think we were doing the podcast, and I was really frustrated. Like I was winning RCQs. I remember you remember this, John, but I was like,
I remember something to that effect. Yeah,
and I was like, I'm winning RCQs. I think I had just lost in the finals of the team RCQ. You guys remember that season? And John was like, I was like, I think I'm better than this player. And John was like, I think you're better than this player too. And that player was like a gold pro. I was like, well, I think I'm better than this player. And John was like, I think you're better than this player too. And I was like, well, what's wrong then? And John literally said to me, he's like, dude, you have a 1-year-old. Like, you're not playing on the same level as them. And what's so funny is we have a whole thing in our Discord chat about parenting and Magic and the balance that it strikes. And I can say, for you, Seth, that Magic has made me a better parent as well. Like, it's not just that, Magic is my hobby, but like understanding like problem solving for my kid and helping them understand problem solving, I'm better at because of Magic. Like, there are things that do that. So don't sell yourself short. I am sure, looking at the way, looking at the videos of your kids and your wife, like, I'm sure you're a great dad. Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, I justify it because I do well, and bringing home a check, it's nice and it helps.
I bought a lot of video games for my son from 1Ks and Magic. So like, he's like, Dad, did you win? Do we get a video game? I'm like, yeah, dude, let's go buy one.
I will also say one thing that I've grown to appreciate more and more about Magic is the socialization part of it. Like, having a lot of my friends be from Magic, and just like, now I'm really going to 4 events per year, like the 3 Pro Tours and Worlds. But I mean, I wish it was a bit more, but it's kind of hard to, like I said, with being a parent, it used to be like 20, 25, 30.
Yeah, I had years where I went to 30, events around the world.
You guys are crazy. This is why I never did this. Like, like my friends, I mean, I have friends, obviously, you guys know, like Michael Hinderocker, Danny Capthro, like my GB Grinder friends, like, they were doing things I was like, dude, like, yeah, I could make my money back, but like, I would have to quit my job. Like, I literally couldn't do this.
Yeah, I'm wishing I had like appreciated all of the unique destinations that we went to too, because a lot of times, because of how much I was into Magic, I didn't care if I was in Europe or if I was in like wherever I would be. I'd just be like, I just want to get there and play games. Like, we'd go to Hawaii and I'd just be the guy like holed up in a room in the Airbnb.
Seth.
Like, no, we're not going to the beach. Like, I'm just gonna, yeah.
Were you that way too, John?
Well, I mean, there were times like, you're in Spain.
You're in Barcelona
for 2 weeks, and you're like, man, the Wi-Fi sucks. The restaurants aren't open. Like, But I did try to like turn tournaments in interesting places into like a longer trip, like Hawaii or Japan, something like that. I mean, I've been to Japan, 4 or 5 times. It was amazing. So, but yeah, there's definitely the pressure of a tournament coming up. It kind of overrides everything when you're in a test house.
On a 2-week trip, you're in Spain for 2 weeks.
Oh, I would stay after.
That's the way to do it. I've never done that because I've just never been able to justify it to my wife, but I've always wanted to stay after, because after the tournament is over, well, actually, sometimes I will have regret because I'll be thinking about a match that I've lost. So I'll just forget about it.
You guys are crazy. I got married.
Forget about what I said.
I think the last trip, I think the last time we stayed in Airbnb, just me and you, and was in Spain somewhere. I think that was one of my last trips. Yeah.
I got married at an SG Vegas.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember a hotel. Maybe it was an Airbnb. Yeah.
Wait, you guys stayed solo? You guys just like bunked up for an Airbnb?
I don't know if this was a GP after a PT or I think it was PT. I feel like it was
Barcelona. It was a PT. It was a PT. Yep, you're right.
And then I remember maybe it was after the test house we stayed together, and then I remember we got an Airbnb for one night in some random part of the city. That was, I mean, I remember it because it was my last trip. But like, yeah.
I remember that. And
you're smiling, John. I haven't seen you smile this much about Magic since.
I love thinking about these trips and the stupid things I did. Like, yeah.
Well, I will say I'll say this about Magic. Like, it sucks just thinking about the whole train thing and how, like, Magic hasn't. It doesn't feel like for people who are super competitive and who want to go pro and like do this and live the dream. Like when I was crying at Worlds, I was thinking about, this is my like NBA finals that I just won. Like this is the dream.
You did it though. That was
which in that moment
Yeah.
it was. And now I feel like, I'm kind of like. I'm kind of like Michael Jordan in his 60s. Like he's not playing anymore.
What is winning the Pro Tour feel like? I don't know the point system.
When you've done it 5 times.
No, well, there's that.
I don't know how many.
How great Seth is one thing, but like, there's like a point system, right? Like, did you get enough points from that Pro Tour win to lock in another year of Pro Tours? Like, how does that work?
For me, I've got. I just keep the train going. Like I've got the next 4.
But was that from the Pro Tour or was that before the Pro Tour?
So I still had the full year. The Pro Tour got me to Worlds. I'm also in the Hall of Fame, so that gets me like
you get one free per year.
One free invite, which I haven't had to use yet.
Wait, do you have to use it at the one though? Like,
you can use it at whichever Pro Tour you want to. Yeah,
John, we're not cool like that. We don't know how this works anymore. I want to talk about some of the great episodes. I just listed some. I don't know if you guys remember other ones. We can break it down, but like we, in our year together, we did episode. I'm gonna go over episode 257 was not compounding mistakes. Seth, you did a really good job of this at your most recent Pro Tour win, where like you were mulliganing really well and not letting the fact that you had mulliganed dictate the fact that you were looking at a new hand. And I'm curious from both of you, like, when you think about not compounding mistakes, is there, like, moments you think about in this? This is, like, a huge thing in Magic that I feel like is under-talked about. Like, people are, like, they make a mistake and then they try to look smart afterwards. They're like, well, like, here's this other option that makes me look smart. But the truth is like, once you make a mistake, that's it. Like, it's made. There's no going back. You're now playing from zero again.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it for Magic. You can also look at it just outside of Magic and look at it from real life. Like, if you look back at your life, you probably have done some things you regret or that were stupid or that you're not proud of or whatever. Like, those things happen. The same thing with Magic. Like, things are gonna happen even for me, like for everyone, within the course of a tournament, within the course of a series of tournaments. And so you have to just realize that mistakes are a part of the game. Like, I don't think you can overemphasize that. I'm sure that is something that's continuously comes up on the podcast. I know it is. And it's just something that as a Magic player, just go to the next turn, go to the next game, go to the next match, go to the next, even if it's the end of your tournament, then at least you just get to walk away and think about the next one. So, it's a mental mindset thing. It is so easy, and it happens very frequently that after one mistake, they do snowball, and that's just how our brain works. Like, we're thinking about the last mistake. Like, if you get fired from a job, you're thinking about, why did I get fired? I'm mad. You're not thinking about your next job, right? Which is what you'd have to be in that moment. So, it's part of the game, but I think that mental fortitude is definitely important. Your example, Spencer, mulliganing isn't necessarily a mistake. Sometimes it is.
No. You're right. You're right. That's actually just like not a mistake. That's a good point. I do want to ask John that this was a episode you were really vocal about doing with us. I don't know if you remember. Like, I don't know if I'm sparking memories.
Well, I actually, the thing I always think about when you made that comment, and I immediately thought about it, was I was watching Manu Devuti play the finals of a GP with Affinity, and
is this the Vegas one?
I was there. I was there for that.
This is actually in the show notes of this episode. Is this real? Yes. Go off, King.
Okay, I mean,
if you actually click on the link, I'm pretty sure his finals is in the show notes.
He was sort of like not that into competitive Magic at the time that he's playing that tournament, I think, but I was watching him play, and I knew the affinity deck pretty well. And he on one turn, he's like, he's in. It's in like a close game, I think, but he has a little bit of an advantage. And he puts the cranial plating with his last land. He taps his last land, I think, and puts a cranial plating on a creature. And I'm like immediately thinking, well, that's the wrong creature, and that's what's going through my head as I'm watching, because like you want it on the ornithopter or something, so whatever, and it's like just inefficient. And then he takes like 3 seconds, and then he's like, he had just tapped his last land, and he's like, no, it's on the wrong creature. He taps the Springleaf Drum, taps his other creature, and moves it to the ornithopter. So it's just inefficient, but immediately recognizing I made a mistake. I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna be set up for the next turn. It doesn't matter if I look stupid. And he went on to win the GP. So,
dude, this
I love
episode
that.
came out in 2018, November 20th.
Was I talking about this
John,
exact example?
John, in the show notes of this episode, we have a video of Monty doing this in our show notes of this episode.
Wow.
That's
it's
so
it's
cool.
stuck in my head. It's just, you have to have a certain personality, and obviously he's capable of being that player of like.
Did you look at this?
Are you
trolling me right now?
No, I didn't look at the past episodes. I just have that story in my head because it just meant something to me that I saw him do that. So
yeah, I believe I was staying with Monty in the same residence for that tournament. I was there for sure.
Do you remember that play? Because I don't think he even really thought about it. Like, I think he's like, no, obviously it should be on that creature. Who cares if I put it on the wrong creature? I'm just going to fix it. And
yeah. And I'm glad that he did that. Because nowadays what people do is they just say, oops, I didn't mean to do that, and they call a judge and they get to rewind.
So
That's how
annoying.
it works.
Oh yeah.
And it's like he made the mistake, and but anyways, that's a judging thing.
And it was probably not a big deal one way or the other. Like, I think it wasn't a big mistake, but it's just immediately like, I'm going to fix it. I know better. I can, from the situation I'm in right now, there's a better play. I'm going to do it.
The one that I remember the most, for some reason, that's just coming to my mind right now, it was a Dragonstorm top 8. And I think it was a Japanese player that won with Dragonstorm, like pulling Bogard and Hellkites. And I remember, like, it was in the top 8. He, like, clearly punted one of the games in top 8. Like, it's one of those things where you're on a huge stage. I don't remember the exact details of it, but, it happened. It's something that happens. I've made punts in top 8s of Pro Tours. Like, I've definitely, I've talked about it on the show. I've talked about how I lost to PBDDR in the top 8 of a Pro Tour in a very frustrating way, up 2 games and, punting the third game away and then losing in the other, the other ones. Like, Magic can feel frustrating at times, but I was able to do well in the next one. So that's just how things go.
Another episode. Sorry, I'm just trying to get us through this. Like, another episode that we're all really passionate about, and I actually remember this one specifically because, John, you had a contest article going on at the time for giveaways. We did an episode on picking a deck, and I thought we all had different approaches at the time on picking a deck. Where, John, you were like, pick the best deck mathematically. Seth, you were like, pick the deck that you think gives you the best shot to win the tournament. And I was like, pick the deck that makes you the happiest because you're going to play the best because of it. And then somehow we all ended up on, I feel like, I have to listen to the episode, but I feel like we all ended up on John's side, where it was like, well,
really?
technically...
I like Seth's side in that.
You're like, I hope we get Seth's credit. I feel like we all ended up on John's side, where, like, we had the discussion, and then at the end of the episode, we were like, well, you should just play the best deck. But I now, for what it's worth, would end up on Seth's side. Like, I played a lot of creativity over the last few years, where, like, I don't know, it's like a really good deck, but, like, has it been the best deck a bunch of times? Like, I just, I just won hundreds of dollars playing this weekend. But I think it's like, I don't know, Seth, you probably talk about this better than we could right now, but like, you play vampires. I think, if I'm not mistaken, were you on mono green before vampires?
I was very close to playing mono green. If I was choosing the deck that I thought I would have the most fun, that would have been my choice for this one. I have made some gutsy decisions with deck choices because I like them. I think it's nice when,
but they paid off though, for what it's worth. Like the green white deck we talked about that you
not
were doing
always,
on the
not always. You're talking about the ones.
All right, let me lift you up. Come on, let's go.
No, I mean, in the Rakdos vampires, it was kind of more towards what John's saying. You know, my teammates were the ones that were practicing the deck. I can't really take credit for anything regarding the deck, to be honest with you, besides being on a great team. And I wasn't in the house for this Pro Tour. So I was just, on Discord and, hey, like, what were the sets? Like, how did the games go? Like that. And they told me, hey, we're Rakdos Vampires. We had a good set against Phoenix. We had a good set against Blue White and stuff like that. So that was the math and trust part of it. But it's nice when all three of these ideas do come together a bit, because I prefer playing decks that I like. I also really like playing decks that or having some element of surprise in my deck.
Sure.
It's always worked really well for me.
Decklist? Like, are they using open decklist now for PTs?
They are, yeah. But I mean, even with this Rakdos Vampires deck,
wait, hold on. Sorry, finish your thought.
Did I open a can of worms there? I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
I think
I was just gonna say.
Go ahead, Seth. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that people, even with open deck lists, like, if there's interactions and cards that they haven't played against before.
Yeah, nobody's seen a Vein Ripper yet. Nobody had seen that. Nobody had seen that yet.
Yeah.
They were like, what does Vein Ripper do? Like, I'm sure you got that like 11 times. I actually think back to Pro Tour Origins. I don't even remember this, John. I think it was the first time we met. We were sitting at a table, and it's actually the second time we met, because you played versus me at a GP before then, between rounds. And I was like, hey, like, big fan, like, let's game, and like, you just gamed with me. But we were at the Pro Tour together, and I was like, you were like, hey, what are you playing? And I told you that I was playing Green Red Devotion, and you were like, oh, that was like the level 1 deck. Like, why did you pick that? And
I don't Origins. You got to place it for me. I don't really remember.
You played the red blue artifacts. Like, it's
Thopters. Okay.
Yeah. And what was so funny about this to me is, like, our difference in deck choice. I wanted to play blue-black control with Majoring Network at this Pro Tour. And my teammates were like, Spencer, like, you shouldn't do that. Like, this is like too off the wall. Just play the best deck. You already are one of the better rule players that would show up at this Pro Tour. Like, just play rule, right? And what's so funny to me is, like, I think, a month later, Reed and Huey won a GP with Majoring Network Blue-Black right after this Pro Tour. Like, literally a month later. And it was a deck that I had spent a lot of time on. What was funnier to me is, like, you weren't confident in your deck, in the Thopter deck, even though it was, like, the breakout deck of that tournament.
Yeah, I don't remember the format too well. I remember, so played Thopters. I think a lot of people played slightly different versions. It was in Soul Artifact, right? That's the
yeah, it was the Soul Artifact deck.
Yep.
And you sat down with me. You were like, oh, I think, like, you were really honest with me. You said, I think that you're gonna have a lot of tough matchups as, like, the level 0 deck. And then you were like, I'm not too confident that, like, people aren't gonna be level 2 and I'm gonna get pushed out. You don't remember this? This is like a
I mean, I don't remember a PT where I was confident about my deck choice. So
that's fair.
I feel like I went 8-8 at this PT. So
we did an episode on you taking 9th with Phoenix and Modern,
Mm-hmm.
it was like the first Phoenix finish. Like it wasn't like
The Phoenix deck. It was really fun.
It was you weren't like behind the metagame. You weren't like pushing off other people. You specifically had a Phoenix build you believed in. I'm kind of curious, like, how does, if you were to give advice to people picking a deck now, what would it look like?
Well, a big part of it actually is what tournament you're talking about. So I had most of my success at PTQs and GPs, where the metagame is more or less established, and I can take what exists and make it better. So yeah, so from like a lot of my GP successes were sort of innovating on the metagame, whether it was my idea or taking from some. I mean, I wanted GP with the hexproof deck right when it came out. Like it wasn't really known. I think 5 people played in the tournament or something, and I had a mirror match with Raptor in the final. But like that wasn't my original idea. But I was just, I added some cards that I liked. On my first top 8, I added Thundermaw Hellkite to the sideboard of Jund, which no one was doing. It was good against Lingering Souls and stuff like that. And I just you have to like have confidence that the change you feel is right. Just do it, because like that's why, for me, that's why I'm playing. I'm not playing to just see if I can pilot Cobblade better than the other guy. Like I want to add my own twist to things.
Yeah,
I actually reference, but I gotta ask you, Seth. Like, do you feel that when you look at your deck list compared to your teammates?
I personally really don't like playing mirror matches. Like, I don't feel like if I play against Reed or Luis or Gab or like whoever, like is showing up with it. Like, I don't think I'm actually that. I don't think I'm gonna be a better technical player. Which, whatever. Like, I'm just just going back to what John's point is, just copying a list that you think other people are going to be playing, even if it is the best deck. That's actually like, so it just feels like such low chances for me of doing well, because like if 25% of the room is on the exact same deck list as me, and I don't feel like I have that much of an edge just purely off of play skill, then how are you going to do well? Like,
I think that's really healthy. Like the reality is you probably do have a play skill advantage over almost all those people, but well, in a GP or whatever, but still that mentality of like people sort of, the better player in a mirror match is not going to be an 80-20% favorite. It's a small percentage among good players. So like finding the edge somewhere else, I think is important.
Yep. Yeah. Like I remember most of my successes constructed, I've had obviously limited success as well, but have been having some sort of innovation. Like I won a Grand Prix with black white control. Like I was probably the only person playing that deck I was the only person in the room playing that deck.
Is there a moment where it hits you? Like I think about, I obviously, I'm not gonna pretend like I got a lot of coaching sessions off of your green white deck, where like I innovated on your green white deck, and people paid me to coach them through RCQs back then. And I'm kind of curious, like I've done this, like I'm a brewer at heart, but you are doing it like at a level way above me, and I'm kind of curious, is there like a moment where you're like, no, I do know that like there's no chance I'm playing the fourth one of these, like there's like how does it hit you?
I told the team I was going to play Children Main, and they could go fly a kite. Like that's what I was going to do. Like I told them I wasn't playing for Dust Leech and Zealots, and then they told me a number of reasons why I was wrong.
Well, they like, if you look at lists now, like 3 is the norm. That is what people do.
I was on 2, but keep going.
I might have changed I thought I was playing something off your list. Anyway, my point is like, if we think about like, let's go back to the podcast that we did together, right? Where we did a whole podcast on green black mid range with like, I don't remember what was in that deck back in the day. It was a horrible inbred metagame that we were all covering in standard. And Seth, you were like, no, this green-white deck with these cards beats this. Nobody else was doing it. Like, how do you get to there?
Yeah, I think that having a defined metagame, like John says, gives me more confidence with choosing my own deck, because I know, like, if you have the expectations of what you're going to play against, then you can, you can play against that deck and prep, and like, you're not going to show up. I never show up to a tournament thinking that I have a bad matchup against the top deck. I'm not crazy. Like, if I expect one deck to be, like, maybe I'm wrong. There's been times where I think I have a good matchup and I don't. That's happened before, but like, I'm never gonna show up and think that I have a bad matchup against the top deck. So like for this last one, for the Vampires Pro Tour, like, I wasn't sure about the Phoenix matchup. I expected it to be the top deck. Some results came in last day that were positive there, and so I went with them. Right, that one I was kind of unsure, but I wasn't. For a while the team was all on mono black vampires, and I wasn't on board, because I didn't think that, and I knew actually that didn't have a good Phoenix matchup. And I'm not gonna, it's one of those things where you can say it once, but you're not gonna keep like beating the horn down. Like, why aren't you playing a deck? Well, you can put that together. But yeah, I mean, I think that just coming up with those innovations and realizing how cards match up. John mentioned Thundermaw Hellkite against Lingering Souls. Thinking about that, and yeah, I mean, Leyline of the Void against,
dude,
is it Phoenix?
I love it. I think that I think about Magic a lot in like the terms of like the people who maybe never made it, that like had the right choice, and it's really cool to have people that made the right choice and also made it happen. I don't know. It's like a special kind of like there's one last question, and then we can wrap this up. I was a huge John Stern fan before. I was asking him, like, hey, my co-host is going to work for Wizards of the Coast. I need a new co-host. Who should I ask? He was like, you should ask John Stern. I was like, there's no way John Stern will work for me. Like, there's not a world in which that will happen. And then not only did it happen, John's like, hey, I really want to do this. Can we bring Seth Manfield along? And I think you had just won Worlds. And I was like, there's no world in which this is my life. That my co-host, who just missed out on gold, now is going to Wizards of the Coast. Like, I couldn't imagine a world where I got to work with you two. And I'm curious, are there those moments for you guys? Like, was there somebody that you got to work with that you never imagined you'd get to, that you learned from, and who was it and what was it like?
That's kind of a hard question, because everything sort of happens in steps. I definitely had a feeling. So when I came back, I took a few years off of Magic when I was working. I came back, and I played sort of like, I was qualified for nationals. It was on my doorstep, so I just went. And then I started going to PTQs, and I qualified, and then had a bunch of successes right in a row, which put me right into gold, I think, in like from 0 to gold in like a few months. So I started testing with some Canadians. We were team mana deprived, and it was kind of like PTQ winners and good players, but like maybe not known on the. And we tested together, and I became part of the core decision makers, and we started adding people to the group. And I think we had a really good team, where every PT for about a year we felt like we had one of the best decks, but we we're still not having the same results as some of the bigger teams. We were sort of lesser known. And then we added Dave Shields, Sam Party, and Jacob Wilson. And all of a sudden we started having like some real successes. And Mike Segrist also came along shortly after that. And then we combined with Channel Fireball for a PT. And that was like all these people that I viewed as like the top echelon of Magic, and I was like, oh, really? We're going to work with, like, we felt we were good enough to contribute on a team like that, but it was still kind of like, wow, I'm actually, finding out what PV thinks about a deck before a tournament. That's insane. So I had that moment then, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe Seth has more feelings about that.
Yeah, I have worked on a number of different teams and with a number of different competitive folks within the Magic community throughout my years as a professional Magic player. Not only just playing Magic, but I've also been creating my own content for about 10 years now as well. So that plays a role into my answer. I would say that for most of the time, my teams have been, for lack of a better word, loose. Like they've just been like guys, just like no organization showing up. Hey, like let's proxy up some decks and let's like pass some people posting like before John's team crushed it with the green white tokens deck. My team was talking about how unplayable that deck was on the that type of thing.
We had no deck for that tournament 2 days before the tournament. Green white was like Steve Rubin and BBD, I think, were the two.
That's
and
hot.
They just
I like that story. That's a good story.
Yeah. Sorry, cut you off.
No, it's all good. But that was, sometimes you do come up with decks last minute. That was a killer deck. But for me, it's the name that I think people, the name that everyone knows, but like it just, there's no other person that I can really say here. Because like I said, my teams have just been a hodgepodge, a mix of folks. A lot of the time it's been people looking to me for the answers, but that doesn't make me better. If people are asking, hey Seth, what do I play? Or why are you doing this? Or just kind of defaulting to what I'm doing, that doesn't make me a better Magic player, help me. So for me, it is going to be Reed Duke. He's just like, beyond just being a very good person, I work with him in under the Channel Fireball Ultimate Guard team right now, and I feel like he's been someone who's very well organized. He's kind of the leader. He plays the leader role of the team that I'm on right now for the last 4 Pro Tours and Worlds. Like Reed, myself, and Gab all played the same deck for the last Worlds, and he made top 8, and he won one of the Pro Tours last season. So I was cheering him on, and I think he's had a pretty good run as well. But yeah, like I remember after the last Pro Tour draft where I drafted the Ogogori deck with 2 murders in it, and like, I know this is a podcast about Constructed.
No, it's okay. It's a podcast about improving.
But like, yeah, Murder is a card that a lot of people were down on in Phyrexian Murders at Karlov Manor limited, just because there's a lot of different removal and it doesn't do well against disturb creatures and whatever. But Reed is like, murder is murder. Like 3 mana destroy a creature is still good. And I was like, all right, I have 2 murders. I'm going to read. Like, he gave me some tips about like siding a land in or out based off play draw. Like, he'll do those little things that I'm not thinking about. And so he'll be thinking about, he's a very detailed thinker. So yeah, I would say Reed.
I love this answer. I love it for a couple reasons. One, people are like, why wasn't Seth on the Pro Tour podcast after the Pro Tour? And I was like, because Seth has 2 kids, and I knew not to ask him to come on the show right after he won a Pro Tour. He probably wants to spend time with his family. I know what's up. But what was so funny is that...
And I listened to Sky, by the way. I think Sky was on.
Yeah, Sky was on. But Sky mentioned Reed. And I just want to say, like, we had just had Reed on the show after winning the Pro Tour. Like, I think that what's really cool about doing a show for this long is you get to learn from lots of different people. And I know for me, like, the lessons that I learned from you two have impacted me a lot. And I hope that if you listen to this episode, I don't know, that you hear the level of dedication that these two put into Magic in their lifetime, because they are literally two of my favorite Magic players of all time. And I often will text Seth and be like, "Hey Seth, just so you know, I need you to do well. I drafted you again."
The fantasy draft. I love it.
But like, I think that, like, I don't know, there's a special thing that happens. Like, you just heard these two talk about, you know, just their weekend in Spain together, and there's just like, there's not this type of thing in a lot of other places. So I just want to thank you both for coming on. If this was like a regular CCMTG episode, I think it would be one of the best ones in a long time, because you both committed so much to it, and I appreciate it. John, if people want to find you to hear about your thoughts on TV shows, video games, you're not on Twitter. I tweeted at you twice in the last year. Pretty sure you haven't tweeted in 2 years.
I don't really. Well, I still read it once in a while, but I must have missed those. But I don't really. I took kind of a break from social media as part of kind of quitting Magic. I felt like, you know, I'm not plugged into the community in terms of the, you know, what Wizards is doing or what's going on, and I still felt very opinionated. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of like complaining about things that I actually don't know anything about. And I felt like I needed to disengage, but I don't really have any like public facing, you know, branding or whatever. I'm on Twitter at John Stern MTL. I've been reading it more lately for whatever reason, but I haven't really posted anything.
Can I ask you, do you know what the new set is?
Well, it's OTJ. Someone's complaining about it being OTJ. Is that right?
Do you know what it is, though?
Well, it's not Odyssey, Torment, Judgment.
It's not that. Do you know what it is?
I've heard it, but I can't remember. Like, if I think about it, I might come up. But...
I wouldn't feel bad about not knowing. OTJ is still known. It's still something, you know.
It's Outlaws of Thunder Junction. It is a Western themed, like, cowboy set.
Oh, I was kind of hoping it was like Mad Max or something.
You don't want to know all the sets. You don't want to know all the sets that have been released in the past.
Well, I know there's been Transformers and Harry Potter. I don't know, like,
there's not been Harry Potter.
Yeah, did they have like schools of different guilds or something?
Oh, they did do that. Yeah, that's true.
There's also these things.
Yeah, I'm not
things.
Like I said, I'm not plugged in to like complain about them, but you know.
Seth, where can people find you?
You can find me on TCG Player / Channel Fireball. Sometimes I'll write for TCG Player Infinite or CFP Pro, which is all now free content.
Yeah, that's this like last 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, last couple weeks. And then also Ultimate Guard. I will be, you know, I really like their products. They're my main sponsor. And you can also find me at Seth Manfield on Twitter and at Seth Manfield MTG when I do stream, which is quite infrequently, but I'm working on the schedule and we'll see. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a little bit more frequent.
You can find me at Spencer13H if you want like personal stuff. Heezy game for Magic. But I just want to say that like these two are, when I think about like the peak era that CCMG could have been and like what we could have done before the pandemic, I'm like often sad by what happened to us. And I think you guys crushed this episode, and I just think you're so great. So,
well, thanks for having us back, and congrats, 10 years. That's amazing.
Yeah, this has been. I'm glad I got a chance to do this, chat with you guys. Trying to think when the next time we'll get to.
We'll find time.
You know, get to reminisce or do whatever. But yeah, this is appreciated. For sure.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you guys on the next episode of CCMTG.